Around 130,000 years ago, during the last interglacial, known as the Eemian in Europe, the world was both strikingly familiar and alien. Temperatures were slightly warmer than today, with sea levels significantly higher, flooding coastal areas that would eventually cradle human civilization. Into this world walked modern humans, whose migration patterns, survival strategies, and interactions with other hominins remain shrouded in mystery. Where there's smoke, there's fire, goes the old adage. Did early modern humans make an unsuccessful attempt to colonize northern Europe 120,000 years ago during the last interglacial? New evidence shows that humans hunted straight-tusked elephants in what is today northern Germany 120,000 years ago. Conventional wisdom would dictate that Neanderthals were the hunters, but some evidence complicates this assumption. Genetic evidence indicates that Homo sapiens and Neanderthals interacted biologically around this time, demonstrating that they were familiar with one another. The history of human evolution and dispersion is becoming increasingly complex. Around 200,000 years ago, modern Homo sapiens evolved the Near East, giving rise to the anatomically modern form we see today. Some researchers contend that our brains haven't changed all that much since then. The conventional wisdom holds that modern humans only arrived in the rest of the world 50,000 years ago. This appears to be true, but it may not have been for lack of trying. Why did earlier sapiens' attempts to venture outside of Africa fail? Do these groups still exist? We don't know. It's possible that the groups were very small and that Neanderthal resistance or geographic restrictions prevented larger migrations. What makes the Levant particularly fascinating is its role as a gateway between Africa and Eurasia. During periods of favorable climate, the region would have been a lush, resource-rich corridor, allowing populations to move out of Africa and into the wider world. The presence of Homo sapiens in the Levant at this time raises questions about the timing and routes of the out-of-Africa migration. One compelling hypothesis is that these early Levantine populations represented a failed migration. Environmental changes or competition with Neanderthals, who were also present in the region, may have prevented these groups from establishing long-term settlements further north. Alternatively, they might have contributed genetically or culturally to later migrations, seeding the traits that would define fully modern humans. The Levantine evidence also highlights the complexity of human interactions during this period. Stone tools and other artifacts from the region suggest cultural exchanges between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals, indicating that the two species may have coexisted for extended periods. Such interactions could have included interbreeding, leaving genetic traces that persist in modern populations. The last interglacial period offers tantalizing clues about the adaptability, ingenuity, and migration patterns of early modern humans and their hominin relatives. The evidence challenges traditional models of a linear out-of-Africa migration, replacing it with a more complex web of movements, interactions, and cultural exchanges. Recent studies have demonstrated that during the early stages of sapiens evolution, we repeatedly left Africa, but we didn't survive the experience. Genetic analyses show that modern humans have not been found to carry any genetic remnants from those early extinctions. But there are Homo sapiens fossils thought to date from about 200,000 years ago that have been discovered in the Near East and Greece, and some of us may have travelled to southern China and India 120,000 years ago. The Eemian interglacial, which started around 130,000 years ago and ended at the start of the last glacial period, was an interglacial period. It is thought that the Eemian climate was warmer than the Holocene of today. Peak sea level was 20 to 30 feet higher than current sea level. On average, the Eemian climate was between 1 and 2 degrees Celsius warmer than the Holocene. Although modern human remains from East Asia, India, and the Middle East have been dated during this time, did we also conquer Homo neanderthalensis' homeland? Researchers claim that the analysis of butchered bones from 125,000 years ago provides the first unmistakable evidence of elephant hunting in human evolution. Modern close-range hunting methods were used by humans in Europe to catch their prey, stab straight-tusked elephants to death, and dismember their corpses. However, fighting is almost universally practiced among human populations, and the hunter is also the warrior in almost all traditional populations. Additionally, we know that Neanderthals produced sophisticated stone tools and employed them in the cutting of wood. However, there isn't any concrete proof that a tree was actually cut down. In the meantime, around 125,000 years ago, humans may have altered a portion of the European landscape by removing trees to make space for habitation. It is the earliest instance of a hominin having an impact on the landscape. Great ice sheets began to retreat around 130,000 years ago, making the area inhabitable until the ice started to advance once more 115,000 years ago. Humans settled in the area during that 15,000-year warm period, perhaps drawn by the area's numerous lakes. Neanderthals are thought to have had an impact on the environment because they were present in Europe for hundreds of thousands of years. They were obviously occupying a niche where they could effectively compete with the other carnivores nearby, since we knew they were proficient hunters. This increases the evidence that Neanderthals were evolving and brings us back to the question of whether they were doing this on their own, entirely independently, or under the influence of modern humans. They were skilled tool makers, had sophisticated societies, and had large brains. They endured difficult circumstances for extended periods of time. The idea that Neanderthals were just grunting cavemen is absurd, and has never been a true representation of the species. They had common sense. In the end, Homo sapiens took over Earth, pushing Neanderthals to the side. That kind of progress is called evolution. Researchers gathered information from the warm period on the various plant species that were still present at the site, as well as charcoal deposits left over from fires. The team discovered less tree cover compared to nearby sites where people didn't reside. Although the surrounding areas were heavily forested, this site would have been much more open, light, and likely more varied. They might not have needed to move, because the lakes and open terrain attracted a lot of large animals for them to hunt. Similar landscape changes have also been made by modern humans, but the record only goes back 50,000 years. The researchers claim that it is the first instance in which it has been demonstrated in a more remote past. Comparatively speaking, this Neanderthal site appears to have been inhabited for a longer period of time, possibly even year-round. Neanderthals aren't actually known for doing that. In fact, they are frequently depicted as being quite mobile, making this site quite unusual, posing the question of whether Neanderthals really did inhabit the area. Nevertheless, 125,000 years ago, humans were hunting and killing enormous elephants in Europe. According to a recent analysis of bones discovered in central Germany, the meat from the enormous animals could have provided food for hundreds of hominids. During the Pleistocene, a geological period that lasted until 11,700 years ago, when massive ice sheets and other glaciers spread across North America and Eurasia, straight-tusked elephants were the largest terrestrial mammals. Adult males could weigh up to 14 tons, while adult female weight was roughly half that. Paleoloxodon antiquus, a straight-tusked elephant, was the dominant ancestor of elephants at that time. It was roughly twice as big as the modern African elephant, and much bigger than the woolly mammoth. When its range reached as far north as Germany during interglacial periods, the straight-tusked elephant most likely lived in small herds and flourished. Early humans, including Neanderthals, hunted these skeletons, as evidenced by the discovery of them alongside stone tools and wooden spears. At the kill site in North Germany, dating to the last interglacial, a skeleton of straight-tusk elephant was found with a spear made of yew wood between its ribs. But this isn't the only time that African elephants and hippos migrated into Europe. During another interglacial around 330,000 years ago, their fossilized bones are also found alongside early Neanderthal tools. The spears recovered from the Schöningen site in Lower Saxony, dating back more than 300,000 years, represent one of the most astonishing technological achievements of early humans. Far from being crude wooden sticks, these 8 spears were carefully crafted projectiles, true throwing weapons, not just simple stabbing tools. Carved from Norway spruce, a wood chosen for its dense elastic fibers formed by slow growth in high elevations, The spears were tapered, sanded, and in some cases fire-hardened at the tip. Archaeologists were stunned to find that the spears had a centre of gravity precisely 1/3 from the base, making them balanced like modern javelins. This engineering precision allowed for both effective thrusting and long-range throwing, hinting at an understanding of aerodynamics and biomechanics far ahead of what was previously thought possible for this time period. The creation of these spears wasn't merely about crafting a weapon. It was a culmination of deep ecological knowledge and generational skill. Hunters would have had to trek into mountainous terrain to find trees that had grown for decades under harsh conditions, with the right diameter and fibre strength. Once selected, each tree was felled and transformed with intention. The root end became the base, allowing the shaft to taper naturally, and the final product was tested for balance. The surviving spears, ranging from about 6.5 to over 8 feet in length and weighing between 1.5 to 2.2 pounds, mirror modern athletic equipment in both form and function. This level of craftsmanship and material selection speaks to a society that observed, experimented and transmitted specialized knowledge long before the rise of Homo sapiens, rewriting what we know about the cognitive world of our ancient ancestors. Glacial periods had a dramatic impact on these hominin populations. As ice sheets advanced, large portions of Central Europe became uninhabitable. River systems such as the Danube, Elbe and Vistula were subjected to megafloods caused by glacial meltwater surges. These catastrophic floods reshaped landscapes, carving new river valleys, displacing populations, and potentially wiping out entire groups of early humans. The immense scale of these flooding events raises crucial questions. Were some of these hominin populations wiped out in mass death events, their settlements and hunting grounds drowned under surging waters? During the Eemian interglacial, when hippos were present in Europe, Neanderthals were the dominant human species. Sites like Barrington in England have yielded hippo fossils alongside evidence of Neanderthal presence, such as flint tools. While direct evidence of hunting, like spear marks on hippo bones, is rare, the co-occurrence of Neanderthal tools and hippo remains suggests they may have targeted or scavenged hippos. A site in Germany called Schöningen, dated to around 120,000 years ago, famously has a wooden spear associated with an elephant skeleton, showing Neanderthals hunted large game. Similar tactics could have been used for hippos, though no such direct evidence has been found. According to a new analysis of 125,000-year-old animal bones, Neanderthals or some other group of humans hunted and butchered the enormous prehistoric elephants, obtaining enormous quantities of meat that could feed hundreds of people. The findings add to the growing body of evidence that the closest extinct relatives of modern humans were not the brutish oafs that popular culture portrays them to be. In central Germany, archaeologists found 3,122 elephant remains. The collection contained the complete skeletons, stomach contents, and unidentified bones of over 70 different straight-tusked elephants. This extinct species was over 13 feet tall and weighed 8 mid-sized cars' worth of weight, between 6 and 13 tons. The largest land mammals during the Pleistocene were elephants with straight trunks. Recently, researchers made the decision to examine those remains in more detail. On the surface of the bones, they discovered a series of deliberate, repetitive cut marks, which could indicate that Neanderthals skillfully butchered the enormous mammals for their fat, meat, and even their brains. According to the researchers, this behavior probably persisted at the location for more than 2,000 years over several generations. The dismembering process produced an enormous amount of meat, more than 2,500 daily portions or 4,000 calories each, according to the researchers. If done by one person, it would have taken 200 to 600 hours to complete. That would have provided food for 350 people for a week, 100 people for a month, and 25 Neanderthals for 3 months. The largest calorie bombs roaming around in these landscapes are straight-tusked elephants. According to the markings on the bones, Neanderthals went to great lengths to gather all the edible food they could, including the fat pads on the animal's feet. There weren't many tooth impressions on the bones, which suggests that there wasn't much for scavenging, opportunistic carnivores to eat. A few isolated vertebrae may have seen some nibbling, but the majority of the remains were so clean that they weren't appealing to carnivores. Neanderthals were thought to have frequent movements and lived in small groups of no more than 20 people. However, the new data suggests that under the right circumstances, such as plenty of food and favourable weather, they might have gathered in much larger numbers, at least temporarily, and remained in the same location. These gatherings might have also assisted individuals from various groups in finding friends. The findings suggest Neanderthals knew how to store and preserve meat, probably by smoking or drying, based on the sheer amount of food one straight-tusked elephant could provide. Neanderthals were actively hunting rather than merely scavenging meat from animals that had died of other causes, as evidenced by the fact that many of the specimens were male and older elephants. Compared to female elephants, which tended to gather in groups to protect their young, male elephants were more likely to roam alone, making them easier prey. Archaeologists believe that the early humans pursued the enormous animals by luring them into pits or mucky areas, where they were killed with spears. Previous studies have indicated that Neanderthals may have also hunted other mammals, such as deer and wild horses. These hunters were skilled in their craft. They were aware of the right targets to pursue, where to look for them, and how to carry out the attack. They were aware of what to expect in terms of a sizable butchery effort and a sizable meat return. The results challenged the view that Neanderthals were essentially nomads who lived in bands of no more than 25 people, apart from one another. The elephant in the room in the field of Neanderthal research actually was group size. Since the 19th century, there have been theories suggesting that Neanderthals travelled in small groups. The only evidence of significant collective subsistence events in the Neanderthal range is the elephant hunting record. The evidence demonstrates how inaccurate our perception of them as steppe tundra, cold-adapted big-game hunters is. They weren't any more representative of modern humans as a whole than those Neanderthals were of Eurasian Neanderthals as a whole, in actuality. It is now widely acknowledged that the Neanderthal that was more typical lived through the Ice Age in southern Europe and the interglacial periods in Central Europe. For instance, fossilized skull and Kafse hominins, also known as Kafse skull early modern humans, were found in the Levant's Skull and Kafse caves. As some of the earliest members of their species in Eurasia, they are now categorized as Homo sapiens. The remains display a blend of characteristics common to anatomically modern and archaic humans. They are thought to be between 80,000 and 120,000 years old. Skull 5 had a wild boar's mandible on its chest. The prominent supraorbital ridges and protruding jaw are visible in the skull, but the modern human brain case is rounded. When it was first discovered, it was thought to be an advanced Neanderthal, but it is now widely believed to be a modern human, albeit a very robust one, who lived 90,000 years ago. According to a more recent theory, the Skull and Kafse hominids represent the first exodus of modern humans from Africa about 125,000 years ago, likely via the Sinai Peninsula, and their robust features actually represent archaic sapiens features rather than Neanderthal features. It's possible that modern humans left Africa even earlier than thought, as evidenced by the discovery of tools made by modern humans from about 125,000 years ago at Jebel Faya in the Arabian Peninsula's United Arab Emirates. Similarly, recent studies have altered our perception of early humans as brutish, cave-dwelling individuals who gnawed on mammoth carcass slabs while dragging their knuckles. There is growing proof that these people were expert toolmakers who spoke a sophisticated language, built homes, traded jewelry, and lived in large social groups. The truth is that ancient humans were using fire to shape their environment and had a significant impact on the largest animals that were alive at the time. Until very recently, they were thought to be simple slaves of nature who subsisted off the land. Of the various problems relating to extinct forms of man, none is of greater interest than that which concerns Homo neanderthalensis, wrote Dr. Arthur Keith of the Royal College of London on the 25th of July, 1918. He continued, "This peculiar and extinct species of man appeared in Europe about the commencement of the Mousterian cultural period and all traces of him vanish towards the close of that period. Where he came from, and where he finally disappeared, we do not know. Hence, every additional fact we can collect about him is of value. Indeed, Dr. Keith's statement is still valid over 100 years later. Thank you for watching and commenting, and please subscribe to help our channel grow.